Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten.
Oh, that shelf.
Boom. We're here to spoil the Marvels. Much anticipated by me. I've been waiting for this movie since like 2021, so
Same. I've been waiting for this for a while too.
I'm glad it's here now. I know that usually we've been talking about the strike. I just saw Justine Bateman say that it's not a very good deal. So I'll just get that out of the way. So not clear on if that's going to actually get ratified.
Right.
You've got people being like, "No, this isn't what we asked for." So,
yeah, it's weird because it's like it obviously can't be good for everyone because not everyone's at the same acting level, same level exposures and all that kind of stuff. So I'd imagine that some things apply heavily more towards some things than others. But I mean, I'll be very interested to see what that actually means to that from that person's perspective.
Well, I think it's mostly because she's part of like, I'm obviously not the negotiating committee, but I think she's high up there in terms of people in SAG-AFTRA. So
I see.
She's speaking from having everyone's best interest at heart, and as opposed to having her value based on whether or not she got a deal. Which is why I'm taking it seriously.
And that's why I was like, that not every actor is going to have the same kind of thing or acting credits or royalties or anything like that. So it's obviously going to hit everyone very, very differently, right?
We'll see how it goes. I bring that up to say that we are recording this in that brief period where it seems like the strike is over and people are back to work, but it hasn't been ratified yet, so who knows what will happen by the time this episode is out.
The dust has settled, but which is why the details are coming out now. So it is what it is.
See.
And with that too, they were quick to jump on Iman Vellani and Brie Larson to go on like their kind of promotional tours or all that kind of stuff to kind of salvage the opening day and all that kind of stuff, because the numbers are in and it's not great, which I was in denial about, because I was like, there's no way this is going to do worse than Black Adam and The Flash. Boy, was I wrong.
I think you underestimated the amount of hate people have for
it sucks because you try to look on the bright side.
Thing where it's two women of color and then a white woman who people think hates white men. So
it's
not gonna be, people aren't gonna go out just to like, there's a lot of people who I think saw it but I don't think paid for it that are hating on it, which also doesn't work.
And then I always try to explore the other side, see what they're saying, whether or not there's valid points and all that kind of stuff. And there's so many reviews out there, and big channel creators and all that kind of stuff that have like a big following, which is good for them. But now that it's based on hate, it's just kind of ridiculous, because I'm like, these reviews are purposely omitting things and acting like they don't know that there's specific writing things that have been linked together to this. And it's just a shame that people and their misogyny and their threat of livelihood, so to speak, is creating this narrative around the movie.
There's even people like Koi Jandro who I've posted his talking points on our Instagram that I just had a bad taste in my mouth. He was we will get to spoiling the movie, don't worry. But he didn't like it. I saw his review and I was like, okay, fair enough. I saw his review before I saw the movie and I was like, okay, this is coming from like a genuine fan, not someone who's like looking for Marvel to do bad and in general not looking to put women down. But then like it's how he reacted to the backlash that made me be like, see, this is, you don't have You can't do that. Like, if you really don't mean to come off as misogynist and racist, you can't mock people that call you that
Yeah.
in your videos. You kind of just need to be like, that's not where I'm at, and you need to play that as straight as possible. That there's no room for sarcasm, because while people understand it's sarcasm, it still comes off as dismissive, and
Absolutely.
that's shitty. I would say that's something he should get better at. Is reading the room on that.
And don't get me wrong, it's not to say that everyone's going to be perfect and woke as they really hate that term or whatever. Like, I make mistakes all the time because there's, and I will 100% own up to it. I've done some dumb things on Facebook and wrote some really, really hurtful things that without context, knowing anything about that history. And then immediately I'm like, oh shit, I was checked. That immediately, just own up to it, apologize, do your thing, but don't layer it behind sarcasm and then act offensive after the fact. That's just shitty behavior.
Yeah, that's shitty. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. Like, you're on YouTube, you understand that things get clipped and stuff, and it just comes, as I said, comes off as dismissive and not cool. That is the time to be earnest about where your intentions are, because the point I hope he's making is you're not racist and misogynist if you don't like the movie, which is true. That should be baseline. Like, you don't have to like the movie just because of who's in it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Yeah. But then don't act shitty when people are like, how come this, how come that? Because that's people's lived experiences, and it feels diminished. Like how I feel so protective of Falcon and Winter Soldier. I don't feel that protective of this, but I'm saying it could be something to someone else, as Brie Larson said. Like, what about the people who are Ms. Marvel's age that are watching it and loving it and younger, that don't want to feel like their enjoyment of this is being dismissed, or their connection to it is trivial and shouldn't be brought up to people they admire who are critics on YouTube. Anyway, having said all that, this movie, The Marvels, directed by Nia DaCosta, who I really like, and starring people I really like, Brie Larson, Mon Vellani, Tiana Paris, is a movie where Captain Marvel fucked up and started a civil war on Hala that left basically a dying planet for the Kree, and Darben is out to make things right. I think that's the best way to put it. And because of her actions creating these jump points, she has entangled Ms. Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and Captain Marvel. She really does not want like a cool code name, Monica Rambeau, but in the comics, Photon or Spectrum or Captain Marvel. But yeah, that is the thing. So I think I'll start with my negatives, because I'll just say this off the top. I like the movie, so I don't have a lot of negatives to talk about. I just enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, but it's twofold. I think the big negative, stems from its placement. I think that it's this weird thing where Nick Fury does not seem like he's coming off of Secret Invasion. So on a minor quibbling level, I would like to just assume this happens before Secret Invasion. For that, but in very serious terms, because obviously his wife is nowhere to see, and he doesn't feel any way about losing his friend. None of that plays into this performance. This is a very fun performance that does not carry any weight over from Secret Invasion. And the other part of that is how they treat King Valkyrie coming to save some of the Skrull and be like, you can come to New Asgard, because
the President
before Secret Invasion, before Secret Invasion, that makes sense when you're like, okay, whatever. But because of Secret Invasion, we know, one, that's not really what the Skrull want, which is to hide on Earth. They want to just be able to be Skrull, which we said during Secret Invasion, that when everyone was like, how come they don't go to New Asgard? It's like, because then they would have to just look human, and that's not really what they want to do. But second, post Secret Invasion, we know that it's just open season for killing Skrull, so going to Earth would not be safe even a little bit. So again, I think the placement makes me just be like, yeah, it's hard to watch this right after Secret Invasion.
See, and I do like that adjustment of it because there are so many things that I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, why is this? And then you're like, that is one of my biggest criticisms. Like, yeah, the wife is not in this at all, and you'd imagine that she would be as a part of this movie.
Mhm.
So I like your take on that, choosing to believe that it happens before Secret Invasion.
Yeah,
I really like
maybe
that
this is the last thing that happened before Nick Fury went down to Earth.
in the space elevator, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what
yeah.
they actually call it here,
Yes.
which I like.
Yeah, let's say that because otherwise, I think those things get in the way
Mhm.
of fully appreciating stuff. But yeah, those are my. I'm pretty sure I'll think of something else, but those are the big things that stuck out to me was the
Mm.
timing of this in relation to character arcs that we've seen and very real things in the universe that would make some decisions not make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. 100%. I had a couple of issues with this movie in regards to like how rushed it felt. And leading to, oh, I wish they would have had more time to air this part out, which is the feud between Monica Rambeau and well, actually Monica Rambeau and Carol exclusively. Like that, I was just like, oh, that was a big letdown. They didn't get to explore that properly from what I thought. And the whole water world scene to me was just like, this is uncomfortable. This is just weird to me. But it is what it is. I had fun, and I think that's important to say that and I think here's another thing narratively around this movie that I'm hearing a lot is just like people are using the word fun as a derogatory kind of sense now, in the sense where it's like, oh, that's an interesting take on that, meaning like, oh, your use of interesting as being like nice and kind about, I disagree with you, you're an asshole kind of thing. But fun is just like, yeah, I don't want to shit all over this because I'm going to look racist or misogynistic if I do. And that's not where I'm coming from. I think it's genuinely fun. I think there's a lot of things here that work really, really great. There are things that don't. But that's what we're here to critique. So
yeah, to me, I think we can go over the personality stuff. The personal connections. I think what stood out to me from this movie is that it felt like it was made by a thoughtful person, and by that I mean, you see Captain Marvel not be very nice to Ms. Marvel initially and be like, get out of here, like stop doing this, and then the next scene is her being like, I'm sorry I talked to you like that. It's not like a thing that's festering. It's like, oh, this is a person that would rather see her characters take that stuff head on, which is why I liked how they dealt with the Monica Rambeau and Captain Marvel thing, which is, this isn't going to be something that they like get petty about and pick at each other about. It is a very direct conversation and conclusion to that conversation. I think that works, especially because, I mean, obviously I'm not saying it has to work for everyone. It worked for me because of the setup of the thoughtfulness that multiple characters were showing. It just felt like that kind of movie of like, hey, you know what? Instead of us like picking at each other, let's just have this conversation right now and let's do a check-in. Like, how are you feeling? And so yeah, where they landed with Monica Rambeau and Captain Marvel was just her being like, how come you never came back? And Captain Marvel being like, I fucked up and I didn't want to come home unless I earned it. And Monica being like, I just wanted my Aunt Carol. Like, you don't have to be this thing, which I like that they go on Ms. Marvel's face on that one, which was like, yeah, you don't need to be this super powered hero to me. Your family, that's not how family works. And then again, right away, Ms. Marvel's like, I'm sorry I didn't let you be human when I first met you and I put you on that pedestal that Photon was just saying you don't have to be on. All of that stuff worked for me in terms of how these characters interacted with each other and the connection they felt. Of course, this could have been longer. I'm always happy to spend more time with people, but I think what they did was set up these posts and, for me, execute on those things in a world where I'm assuming they're not going to give this woman the time she needs to tell the story she wants to.
That's very true because they deal with it. I did like that they dealt with it in a very direct, mature way,
Yeah.
especially coming from Kamala as well, being like, "Hey, I'm immediately aware of how my actions would have made you feel and all this kind of stuff." But to me, it's just like all the work was done by Kamala and Monica Rambeau, and not necessarily Carol. And then that's the thing that bothers me is like Carol was just like, I'm sorry for not being perfect. And then everyone basically had to console her to be like, no, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be you. You need to be honest. You all this kind of stuff. You're too in your head about this kind of thing. And it there was no give from Carol aside from her insecurity in that moment. And
Yeah, but
it
it's
wasn't.
just that moment. She is
Mhm.
able to work with them properly after that. So
Yes.
what would it look like to you if she was doing it the way you wanted?
I just would have liked more exploration from her side of things about like because she's always used the moniker of like I've been doing this over internationally and all this kind of stuff in it like there's other worlds to save and like those are good kind of things and to a degree I do like that she didn't use that as a defense. It was just like this is what it was and it was honest and it was good,
Hmm.
but it was just oh man, you're really putting all the emotional labor on these two women of color right now, and that kind of sucked because all she did was oh I needed to be perfect, I needed to earn my right to come back at some point, and I'm just like I don't think that would have ever gotten you to go back in a meaningful way because to her point in the end game or whatever, yeah, there is still a lot of planets that need her help and all that kind of stuff. So it's a weird kind of thing where I just don't think there was enough given from Carol's standpoint, and there was a lot more consoling on the two women of color in that scene, and that was
I
weird to
didn't
me.
see any consoling. Everyone said what their thing was, and then
Mm.
they moved on. And
That, yeah.
I'll tell you this: I know what it looks like to try and emotionally protect a white person.
Mhm.
Didn't see that in the scene.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's just how I felt about it. I'm just
Yeah,
like, oh man, Carol, you could have really done a little bit more with. But that's
I
just
guess I just
me.
don't know what
Yeah,
you mean by a little bit more.
fair enough.
Yeah, it just feels like let's both agree that the movie could be longer, but I don't know
Yes.
exactly what beats you're talking about. It
Mm,
doesn't feel like, and I'm not putting that on you. That's not something you
no.
have to give me. I'm just saying what you have said didn't really feel like I knew what that looked like
Hmm. Hmm. And I
beyond
will
what they did
say,
in the movie.
yeah, and I will say this is just this is one of those things where I'm like, crap. I really wish I had that same ability to review it, watch it twice, like Loki.
Hmm.
Because I was like, yeah, I definitely am not putting everything together coherently because that's what I felt in that scene.
Hmm.
And because it moved on so fast into a really good scene afterwards, it's like, oh, we're doing the training montage, the Beastie Boys. This is sick. I love
Yeah.
that. It was just it one thing to another, and that was good. But I'm just like, when I look back at it, I'm like, I really do wish that they had a little bit more there. Especially for where they leave Monica at the end of this. It you know, it is what it is. But that's kind of how I felt for the issues. And then when they get to the water world, which I can't remember, I'm just like this.
Aladdin or whatever it is. It feels like
Yeah,
it's like called Aladdin, but with an extra syllable. Uh,
exactly.
like where
And
her husband is that that the musical
yeah,
planet?
yeah, the
So this is what I liked about the movie, and like I understand because I've seen people that I've since unfollowed being like, read between the lines when I say it's fun, but like you, I genuinely think it's fun, and it's for stuff like that, like a swing like that, where they're like, yeah, maybe they go to a planet where uh you have to sing, like that's their language. Like I love that line, like, oh, he's bilingual. Like wait, he
Oh,
doesn't have to say it. Like, oh, he's bilingual. I love that, but I think I'm sure we'll have the same thing. Like in terms of digging deeper, I would have liked if every planet they went to had some. Not every planet being musical, but every planet having a thing. Especially
mhm.
because of the type of movie it is. It's kind of just like let's just move on. So like if every planet felt like it had a thing to it, that would have been cool. Because yeah, I think in isolation it just feels weird to have like just the one
Mhm.
planet with a bit. But I liked the bit, and I thought like that is fun and something that's not in every superhero movie. Like it felt like
Mhm.
it was differentiating itself. Um, and we talk about this a lot with specifically Star Wars, but like once it gets to a point where people are down on a franchise, they're just going to keep saying it's the same thing over and over again, which I didn't feel about this movie.
Oh, this is
I
definitely
felt
not
like,
the
oh,
same
this
thing
is
over.
like
Yeah.
say it again. This is fun, and they're doing different things. Like it there's the fun things they do, but also the thing I was talking about having the characters actually address the issues in a timely manner. Um, and I think that's because I just knew right away, like, this is a fun movie. It's not like a Black Panther or a more methodical thing. And I'm not saying that to knock it down. I do think, like, I looked at it more like an Ant-Man type movie where you're like, yeah, you're just supposed to be having fun right now. And I mean the first Ant-Man, not the other two. But like, that is how I looked at this movie. So then my expectations adjusted accordingly in terms of how deep things would get, and I think a lot of that is wrapped up in how they chose to portray Nick Fury, which I enjoyed. But again, after I was like, you know what, this just happens before Secret Invasion. This is while he's still like in that period of I'm up here, so I don't have to deal with problems, and he can be lighthearted like this, and that's fine.
Because post to this, you would be like, I think you would take this a little bit more seriously, considering your wife is, I would assume, right next to you and, you know, helping you do shit, especially because the Skrull are directly involved in this movie,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I love that take on it. It's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, the Waterworld stuff doesn't work quite so well for me, just because I'm like,
it's not gonna work for everyone.
And don't get, I'm a guy that loves musicals, believe it or not, because there's this scene later, like in the movie, the cat scene, where I'm like, I can't believe they're really pulling out Memory right now. This is hilarious to me. That the world, it doesn't work because it's just like, why isn't there the same sense of urgency that should be brought to this mission right now? It's kind of like, oh, we're gonna let them do their customs, we're gonna let them do this, and then be really weird about that, like, oh, her husband kind of thing. And it's just, there's no sense of like, oh, your people are in danger right now, and this is
she
why.
does sing it. Like, her lyrics are very much like, this is very important, this is what you need to do when she gets here, this is what needs to happen. She's walking him through it. It's just a lot of things are happening around her, but her actual singing to him, which is when a lot of people in my audience were like, ugh, like that, she is being very urgent and direct about what needs to happen.
Okay, that's fair. I guess it did get wrapped up in the tonal experience of song and
she's
dance.
Being very specific about like, this person's coming. When she gets here, let her off. Like, let her do her shit, and then we're gonna do this. Like, she's giving him the play-by-play of what needs to happen.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah. Okay, I'm glad you pointed that out. But because to me, I'm like, oh, it really doesn't feel like there's a sense of urgency to the guy, the only guy that's bilingual.
Like,
there.
if it was like a patter song, maybe it would have felt like it was more urgent. But since
Probably.
it feels like more like a love ballad, then it doesn't feel as urgent. But what she is saying is urgent.
I don't think I had an issue with this, but I just thought it was weird how she was so weird about like her husband and like her actually being a princess and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, wait, what? Why wouldn't? Why is this so weird for her right now? I don't know.
I think she does see it as like a marriage of convenience, and she didn't want to get into it. And I think the movie, and I will definitely say this is definitely a Disney thing. The movie didn't let them fully get into her and King Valkyrie, but there was clearly a moment of affection there, and what was probably like a real relationship.
Wait, you mean Prince Yan? Prince Yan?
No, King Valkyrie and Captain Marvel. When she shows up on the ship,
okay,
she like kisses her like you would kiss someone that you've been in a relationship or are currently in a relationship with, and just the moments that they let breathe in that. Maybe it was just the actors doing things, because I know they both have been like, yeah, we ship each other in Marvel. Like, that's been a thing. The actors have independently done, and I can see. I know Tessa Thompson is Nia DaCosta's friend, and she was in Nia DaCosta's first movie, so that meta makes sense that she's in the movie for a bunch of reasons. But like, I would imagine that an unedited version of that movie would have played into her relationship with Valkyrie that she can't fully endorse, and then feeling like she like, and this isn't for her looks, but like being in this marriage convenience with a man and then being not so happy about that for many reasons in front of her friends that she should, or family members that she should be able to be open with. I don't think the movie gets there. I understand I'm meeting it more than halfway, but I would imagine if Nia DaCosta had her way, that would have been actually what's going on. And this is more an instance of having to cut stuff out so it can be in certain markets.
Yes, and that's a good point because I do agree, and I wanted to bring that up. I'm glad you did with Tessa Thompson's character. I'm like, no, Mike Adar was definitely going off in that scene like crazy, and then when they get to what's his name, Prince Yan, I'm like, oh, there's like nothing here, which is why I'm like, yeah, okay, marriage of convenience, all that kind of stuff, but. To me, I'm like, if it didn't mean anything, it would have been easier to explain rather than to be all weird about it.
I think, again, yeah, I just think it's because it feels to me Brie Larson's playing it like I didn't want to be in a heterosexual relationship anyway, and I don't want to have to like. And then Disney would be like, we're not getting into that during this. So then it's just left with her being awkward.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Friends.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that means it's good. I'm saying that sucks that something like that wouldn't be able to be explored, and that's not for time. That definitely feels like so Disney can get into all the markets they need to.
Yeah, I completely do agree with that because that is one wish of the movie. I'm like, I wish they had the ability to actually explore that a little bit more because I'm like, yeah, like I said, gaydar in that scene, and then this scene is like, oh yeah, like that would make sense if the character was gay, and like, and if the
not straight, like. Queer,
right, queer. And if she was queer, then a lot more of these critics would kind of,
because I feel like they were flirting with that with Maria Rambeau as well in the first movie.
I think so too. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Nothing. I can't be like no for sure. It's just it felt like that's what they were flirting with, and for the same reasons would never fully get into it.
No, I agree
enough
with you.
For people to even be like they were implying it. I just think both of us sensitive to that kind of stuff can be like, I'm pretty sure there was something there.
Yeah, because the moment I saw that happen, I'm like, that there was something, there was a relationship that there at some point. It would have made sense because and even Tessa Thompson talked about it too. Just the concept of the Valkyries itself is just like
they've removed her like female love interests in 2 movies now.
Yes.
Well, this one isn't technically removing it. I mean, maybe they did. I can't say, but it felt like in Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, they talked about how she would have a female love interest, and both of those movies don't have her with a female love interest, like explicitly stated.
It's definitely like you gotta not only read between the lines, but you gotta project onto that because there's just that weird thing where I'm like, I know what that is. They've done things together and they're happy about it, but they didn't get to explore it because that's a look of a like, oh, I wish it was easier to be together with you, but you're running, your new Asgard thing there, and I'm doing my thing, and we get together on weekends every now and then. But
yeah,
I'm definitely protecting on that, but my gaydar was definitely going off in that scene. It was great.
Yeah, I agree with you that it leaves much to be desired in the movie we got, but based on Disney's track record, I can make assumptions like that, and
I think those are fair. I think those are very fair assumptions that Nia DaCosta did actually want that, and it's just like, oh, I'm going to leave in as much as I possibly can.
Yes,
yeah, that's fair.
The villain, what's her name again?
Dar-Benn. I know she's that forgettable. That is a major downfall.
I don't even like. It's weird because it feels like everyone's just on board with Dar-Benn. Like even the way Ms. Marvel, who you would think would have quips about her, was like, no, Dar-Benn did that, and you're like, so she's just right on board with this. Like the movie doesn't really build her up. It's just everyone's just like, Dar-Benn. We all know that. There's no need to talk about it any further. It's Dar-Benn. I did feel that like earlier movies, and I think just in general, whenever they have a Kree villain, no one really cares. Like
no one does.
MCU doesn't really care about Kree villains because she's taking over for Ronan the Accuser, and whoever Jude Law was also a Kree villain, and I think those are 3 villains we can all agree are like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's not because the Kree are assholes. They're assholes, but
I think it's like early. to me it's like early MCU where they were just like, it's about the heroes. We don't look, the villains are just there so that you can like them heroes more. And I feel like that was this approach here as well. Of like, yeah, whatever, man. Like she just needs to. She's got a very good, not plan, but she's got a good cause, which is my fucking people are dying. So we have like, I thought that was a very interesting thing that she was legitimately going to broker a deal with the Skrull.
Me
She's
too.
like, I'm willing to put aside. She's not joking with. She's not trying to screw them over. She's like, I am willing to put aside our centuries long thing, and just work with you, and I will get you out of here because I'm going to tear up the atmosphere. I'm telling you that right now. I'm going to get you out of here before all of that. And then Captain Marvel shows up, which Nick Fury told her not to do. And she's like,
yes.
you brought her? Fuck you
brought
guys.
the Annihilator?
Yeah. Like, so it's just like, I thought that was interesting, but I also was kind of like, I get what we're doing here. There's no real like interest in her because her cause is strong enough. Like her cause is just like, yeah, this is what she's got to do.
And I will say, like, I liked her motivator through this movie is the idea of like, no, I don't want to take over the world. I want to save my people right now. And you know what? She was traumatized by Carol Danvers.
By boulders, yeah.
Yeah, she was traumatized by Carol Danvers, and they have nicknamed her the Annihilator and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, Carol really screwed up. Like she, like you destroyed the one thing you just left, and that was it. And you created so much political unrest and the civil wars and all that kind of stuff. And, all of that was just like, those are good motivating factors. That makes sense of why she would be like, no, I'm attacking the things that you love to save my people because this is all on you.
I'm going to get you back, but also save my people.
Yeah, she's not trying to be like, and then we're going to get the Infinity Stones. No, it's just a very good kind of thing. I just wish there was more flushed out with that character because, and this is the one thing I will say, I heard someone call her Dollar Store Ronin, and I'm like, yeah, that does fit a little bit given how little attention they gave that character beyond the first
she's
act.
Dollar Store Ronin because I don't really care what Ronin wants. Like he just seems to be mad because he's Kree versus like we said, Dar-Benn actually has a mission that's worth trying to carry out. So I would say she's better than him. She's not more visually interesting than him, but she is more interesting than him.
I would agree with that, especially like even Thanos is like, I love that line. It's like your politics bore me and your demeanor is that of a child to Ronan. I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt about Ronan the entire time. This was actually mature. She brought her A game to the negotiating table. It's like she cared and she wanted the best for not only the Kree but the Skrull too.
And that's what I mean by this movie felt like it was made by a thoughtful person. Like,
yes,
like it. I mean, I know that filmmaking isn't one person, so I'm sorry to keep saying that. I think I'm trying to just praise Nia DaCosta as much as possible because I like whenever these Marvel movies that arguably can be made by committee feels like the name that they put on the movie had some say in it, and that their stuff gets to leak through, which is why I liked Multiverse of Madness so much, that because it did feel like Sam Raimi got to do his thing in a Marvel movie, and this feels like it doesn't feel like her other movies, but watching her talk about her influences, I'm like, well, it seems like you were able to accomplish that for this movie. It seems like you had a very specific thing you wanted to do for this. And I see where you got your wins in terms of how your personality shows up in this movie.
That's the biggest thing. Like when we consider the fact that this is by committee, like you said, we still gotta see whether or not the captain of the ship had enough reins on the whole thing to kind of get the final vision across. Right? We'll hear about James Gunn in Guardians 1 being like, yeah, I liked it. I just didn't want the Thanos scene in there or stuff like that. And just like that was forced in. But James Gunn ultimately got to make the movie he wanted to make. And Nia DaCosta in this kind of situation probably had a lot less control.
Yeah. I would say she definitely
James Gunn
would have less control than James Gunn, but that's what I was trying to pick my words carefully of just that stuff of hers got to sneak in to this.
Yes.
So it doesn't feel completely devoid of her touch.
Yeah. And that is the funny thing, is just like when we consider the God, the brain trust of what Marvel and Disney is and all that kind of stuff. I can clearly see why she got a lot of things past them because those are a lot of things that a lot of like those CEO types would just not be in on is the idea of like, oh, that look between Tessa Thompson and her is like that's a very telling thing for people like you and I that know,
I think
but
yeah, she might
they
have been able to
wouldn't
just
have
get
been
it
able
and be
to.
like, oh, great, we got a cameo. Like, perfect.
Yeah,
Do whatever you want. We got a
yeah.
cameo.
Yeah, but like just like, oh, I'm gonna pick this one shot and this
Mhm.
one facial expression and like go behind the scenes and go like, hey Tessa, wouldn't it be fun if we did this? And they didn't know about it. And I'd be like, yeah, that would be fun. And that's where like, yeah, she got some of those things in. But for the most part, I think there was more control by the brain trust at this point on this movie than anything else, which is not it's obviously negative from I wish Nia got more control over it than what she did, is what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah. I mean, who knows? She was on Blank Check twice, and she was very candid. They bleeped stuff out, so there's stuff she said I don't know what she said because they were like, just to protect you, we're not gonna keep that in. But both times she was on, she said she got to make the movie she wanted to,
That's good.
and that wasn't her promoting the Marvels. That's her to talk about someone else's movie.
Mm,
Um, so I don't. I think ultimately, no, she wouldn't have as much control as a James Gunn,
mhm,
especially because of the property history of like them being like, we need a win for this Captain Marvel thing because
yep.
it's coming off of $1 billion and no one, it hasn't aged well with the vocal detractors.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, so yeah, I would agree. She probably doesn't have, but it doesn't. And she, as I said, was very honest on those two
mhm,
episodes that I heard her on, um, about what she liked and what she didn't like. It didn't feel like one of those things where it was like the movie was taken away from her. It
mhm,
just, I think it was more like she got to do what they agreed to letting her do.
mhm,
Uh, whether that's 60% of the movie or 80%, I think that's more what I hold on to, which is they didn't steal this away from her and
yeah.
just put her on as a name.
I very much like the wording of that. That that very very subtle and nuanced description. Um, but yeah.
But yeah, I think, yeah, if people want to shit on the villain, sure, whatever. I think I, as I said, I don't really have that many negative things to say about the movie because I was like, yeah, this is fun. I get it.
Mhm,
And I think, yeah, I think we talked about the hand holding that they would do, and I feel
mhm,
like I can see how people. I mean, I went to see it with Pauline, so like a lot of it was her being like, "What? Who is that?" Like the first scene with Kamala, she's like, "So she didn't know that band was magic," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I guess this really is just assuming you watched uh Ms. Marvel for the how the
mhm,
band stuff works, but." I do think that by the end of it, you understand who she is, even if you haven't watched the show, and you understand
mhm,
everyone like how they fit together if you haven't watched the shows.
mhm.
It's just I do think I'm kind of initially they are just like, yeah, you know who this is. Don't worry about it. And I think Pauline liked the movie more than I did ultimately, and she hasn't watched any Disney Plus shows or
Mm.
and so I think the last movie she saw, I guess she did see Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but she hadn't seen a bunch in between them.
Mm. Yeah, so it
So,
would be hard to piece together, but and this is
but I
one of
think
those
she
things.
liked it. She was just like, yeah, like that worked.
Mhm. I did say because I watched this with my buddy Joe, as I often do with these new releases, and one of the biggest things I said was going into this movie, I think this movie is going to have a big task because two leads are established in Disney Plus shows, and whether or not
Well, two
we're actually
actors, because
two, yeah,
Monica is in the first movie.
sure. But two of the actors here, or two of the characters here are established in Disney Plus shows.
Well,
I
I would
was
still push back
really
on the characters because the
mm,
character was established in the first movie. That's like a big emotional pull of Cap or Lieutenant Trouble.
right. Okay. Um, Either way, it's just I was wondering if they were going to be giving us like a brief rundown in any kind of way or something like that. And they kind of do, which is kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat. They found a way to do that in a way that really makes sense to me, and that kind of let the audience in on, oh, this is who Kamala is, and let her know the powers and all that kind of stuff in a really quick way through the animated stuff, which I was so happy to see make into this movie,
Yeah,
because that's
that
one
was
of
nice
my
to see
favorite
that come back.
things in the Miss Marvel show, and the family making it so
They were
heavily
in it
into
way more
this.
than I thought they would be, and I'm not saying that as a
Hmm.
negative. I was like, oh, nice, they got
Yeah.
to like actually be a part of the movie.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pluses and all that kind of stuff. And that, like, when the brothers like, oh man, look at the scale and everything, it really makes you think. And then
Like he
the
does, like, and
mother,
it's cool.
the mother's kind of like shooting him, looking like, don't you dare question God right now. It's like, oh, it's cool. But yeah, they're such a good emotional beat within this whole movie. The fact that they were so heavily involved was really, really fun for me to see. Really and
Yeah,
truly.
I think that works if you've watched the show and understand like where Kamala and her mom have come from, like how
Yes.
that was such a big part of the show was them being able to speak like they do in this movie.
Mhm.
Um, Again, you if you didn't know that, it wouldn't really deter from it, but I think as you told me before I saw it, like it does reward the people who watch the stuff. Like
Mhm.
it is not it feels better seeing them interact like this in this movie, knowing where they started in the TV show.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, okay, another thing. It's not a complaint so much as a confusion. Was they said whenever they use their light based powers, they get entangled, but isn't
At the same
Ms.
time.
Marvel just light based? Like she was making platforms and not switching, and I was just like, I don't get where the line is in terms of like with I'll just call her Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau and Captain Marvel, I get that they have other powers they can use that aren't light based, so it's fine for me to watch them do it. But I was just like I remember at one point Pauline was just actively like, "What is she doing? She's an idiot. She's gonna get caught." Like Kamala when she started doing Pauline was so stressed out. She's like, "What is she doing? Stick to the plan." And it doesn't initially switch over, and then it does when it does. But I was just
Yeah.
like, I don't know what she did differently to make the switch.
So it's funny because that was one of the things that I was being like, oh, this mechanic is really inconsistent. It's really, truly inconsistent. But then there's a line later on where they figure out how the mechanic works of them switching. And Monica is kind of like, oh, it seems, and being the scientist that she is, and I really like the fact that she brought this to this movie, that she was like, oh, it seems if we use it once and we switch but stay using our powers, then it's not gonna transfer us every single time. It's at the initial use every single time, which I'm like, okay, but still the way Kamala uses her powers, like every platform is a use. It's a new
Mm-hmm.
use of it. It's not a continuous use. Like she's not doing like an Iceman bridge thing to travel. You
Right.
know what I mean? Where it's like one continuous shot. It's like there's multiple platforms. And I'm like, yeah, that mechanic aspect of it, although fun, was heavily inconsistent. And there is one part in that original thing where it's just like, yikes, how are they going to get all three of them together? And then Carol just shows up out of nowhere, where I'm like, oh, I felt like something got cut there that really would have made sense out of that. But because you have Kamala and then Monica fighting Darben, and then
Mm-hmm. Carol.
Captain Marvel just, or Carol just shows up, and you're like, she can't travel that fast, man. There was something that was cut out there, I'm pretty sure, but that was something that was all right. I'll this they're the three of them are together. Cool, they can figure it out now. Yay.
Yeah, I would say that I would also be fine if people had an issue with the mechanics of that. What I thought was very fun hook of
Mhm.
they switch places when they use their powers. I thought that was an effective way of curbing Carol's powers, but it didn't have to isolate her. It was and not something that she had to earn back. It was just like, all right, I have to actually be strategic about how I use my powers, which I think overall made me okay with everything because it was forcing them to be strategic and it led to fun things, but also just like it's cooler knowing that they're like trying to synchronize this and it doesn't
Yes.
always work, but it's like I liked that aspect of it. But I was just like, I don't really get like I felt like they had enough ambiguity with Carol and Monica that I was like, I mean, sure, maybe they're not doing their
Mhm.
light power thing here, but for me, I was just like, I just feel like Kamala's only light powers, so I don't really get
Mhm.
how she's doing this. And
Yeah.
you've explained it, and I'm just like, yeah, I just feel like sometimes it wasn't the initial thing that's made them switch.
It was definitely heavily inconsistent. The mechanic. It's a fun mechanic
Mhm.
because it led to one of the best training montages of all time. Like watching them do that kind of stuff.
I
Like
loved the jump rope when she was like, and
yes.
go, and go. Can you give me a minute, please?
That was so good. There's other aspects that are really really good, but then the part that took away from me, whereas like when they became untangled and they could use their powers freely, all that kind of stuff, which is great. Carol just goes immediately back down to oh, I'm gonna try to solo everything. And I'm like, oh,
That
good.
makes
All that,
sense to me.
yeah, that all that teamwork building and all that kind of stuff was only temporary, and you just
Well,
defaulted back, which
she
sucked.
she also, I mean, she didn't, but I see what you mean fighting wise, but ultimately she didn't. But I like that what they did was they stuck on her face when she learns that they're untangled, and her realization that means that they don't have to be together anymore, and that she's not that happy about that. That before it wouldn't matter what mistakes she made, they have to stay together so that they can sort this out. And now they do have the freedom to go off about their day, and she's back to being solo. And I like that would translate into her immediate reaction, being like, well, then I'm just going to go back to what I was doing as a protection, as a self-defense thing. But
Yep.
as you see when the movie ends, that's ultimately not where her head's at.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because they can't get to the end of the movie unless they work together. And that's where she's reminded of that on the water world and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right that when they focus on her face and like, oh yeah, I could go back to what I do best, and it's just like what you do best is consistently being called out in this movie. Consistently, even like Samuel L. Jackson's like, don't do this, don't do this.
Mhm.
Are you gonna go ahead and just rush in again and not think and all this kind of stuff? I get like that is the most realistic thing, that once you are freed of those bonds, you just go back to what you know and rely on as like a response or a reactive kind of thing. Especially with one person that's been used to going it solo her whole life, right? I get that. It's fun. It just really, really sucked to see in that moment. I'm like, oh, this is just because you're being hard headed again. What a bummer. But then they get there at the end. I'm like, yay, you learned how to rely on others. Good for you, Carol.
Yeah. You don't have to go it alone. What else is there? Yeah, I don't know. I think if I haven't said already, I like the three leads. I thought they did a good job with their characters. I was genuinely surprised by the scene before the credits. So not the mid-credit scene, but just like the last scene in the movie proper, when she's like, "Oh, that gave me an idea. Like, we were a good team." And I was like, even when the pizza gets thrown to the dog, I was like, "Who? What? What's going on?" I was like, "Oh, that's nice, Kate Bishop.
Yeah,
good stuff. I like that. That's nice." I'm glad they're finally paying off the Young Avenger drops they've been doing all through the Disney Plus episodes.
I
Or
completely
shows.
agree. I completely agree because it's just one of those things where, and I get this is a good criticism of Phase 4, that they set up so much stuff, but there's no follow through whatsoever, and no ultimate direction when they launched. This is what Phase 5 and 6 is going to be. It's just like, wait, where's Shang-Chi 2? Where's this? Where all the kind of stuff that we're building up that we're supposed to be tent poles. It just doesn't seem to go that way. And finally, it's like, oh, good, we're something Young Avengers. You spent so many movies building up all these young kids, and there's no direction with it. And now there's finally something being joined together. Neat. I like that a lot. And
Yeah.
Iman Vellani,
this movie, I think, did do a bunch of stuff that people have been complaining about, which is, I'm not gonna say I'm surprised why people hate it, but it is. We'll get to the big mid credit thing, but before that, like you do understand like the very immediate issue with like incursions that they've been hinting at all through Phase 4 in this movie. They're paying off the Young Avenger stuff. It's all the like, hey, look who we got in the movies shit that people were complaining about through all of Phase 4. So I was just like, I don't know, man. It just, yeah, I don't. I'm not enthused with the fandom in quotation marks. Just
I completely agree with that. I'm glad you said that because it's just one of those things where I'm like, evidently, you can give everything that people are whining about in this one movie, and they'll still find ways to like be complaining about it. I'm like, no, they did literally all those things. Like, where's this going? Okay, Young Avengers, cool, confirmed now. What like the other scene which we'll
incursions
talk
are a
about
problem.
incursions.
We have universes collapsing on each other. Like,
Yeah, it's just like everything that they've been criticizing, this movie actually does address, and there's people are still going to try to find a way to shit on it because they just don't like women and women of color. And I'm like, this is just shitty.
yeah.
It's you're. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I understand like what it doesn't work about this movie.
Mhm.
I understand it's not perfect in the ways that I think movies like Black Panther are, or
Mhm.
even Winter Soldier. But I appreciate that they're trying to do something else as well. Like there's a bunch of fan service in this, but as I said, I liked the swing they took with the musical and the musical Planet, and like you, I enjoyed when they played Memories during the cat scene. I like that it was like them switching off isn't something that just goes away.
Mhm.
Like that is something they legitimately have to work through. Yeah, I just thought they found interesting things to do in a movie that could have just been by the numbers. Like it didn't feel like the Marvel cookie cutter thing that people like to complain about.
I completely agree. When some of the headlines in like some reviews of like, oh, just another standard Marvel movie. I'm like, what are you watching? This is not a
Yeah.
standard. This took risks. It did a
Mhm.
lot of different stuff. It paid off a lot of different stuff from other movies, all like and to me, one of the most successful things was they actually blended these three women's kind of individual takes on like how they were established in other properties and fuse it all together in a very, very interesting and fun way. Like the
Mhm.
idea of like the moment Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan goes like, I shouldn't have put you on a pedestal and all that kind of stuff. You see all those like the daydreaming mechanics and all the animated stuff. Like that's just not a part of the movie anymore, which is
Yeah.
it would have been hard to make it a part of the movie continued, but it is fundamentally addressing that. It's like, hey, you got to stop daydreaming. You've been daydreaming. You've been wanting this your whole life, as evident by your weird obsessive room,
Mhm.
and you're in the moment now. You got to step up. You got to do this thing, and she does that. She takes it seriously, and it's everything about that is like, this is great. They really evolved those characters and those
And
kind of things, but kept that fingerprint.
that's the same reason I liked how they dealt with Monica and Carol, because it was like
Mm.
Monica stated, that's not how family works. You don't have to like prove to me why you need to be here. You're my aunt, so I just want you around. And then they're around each other. So it's it would have felt like weird if she was like, now you do something for me so that I know that
True.
so that I know that you love me too. Like it's like that would prove Carol's point. So I just
Yep.
like as you said, the hero worship drops for Miss Marvel when it needs to,
Mhm.
and that tension that we started in WandaVision drops when Monica has the conversation with Carol.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think those are strong points. And did you want to talk about the mid-credit scene now?
Oh, definitely, but not before I say one last thing, which is that my theater lit up when Park Seo Joon was on camera. They were
Nice.
so
I
happy
like that.
about that.
I
And
like
I'm
that a lot.
like, and I like the Brie Larson kind of interview where she's like, yeah, this is probably the most famous guy I've ever worked with. I'm like, yeah, have you seen K-pop numbers? It's ridiculous right now. And
Yeah.
like Park Seo Joon is just like for them to get him in as a part of this movie, I'm like, they're really, really doing stuff that I personally think is really, really cool and interesting. Try to reach into different fan bases, and that might have been just like the statistics thing or this like stats sheet thing where it's like, hey, you know what, young women really like this K-pop thing. So let's get this guy, this
I
fella
mean,
over here, kind of like the Harry
Nia
Styles
DaCosta
thing.
is the youngest. She's the youngest MCU director, like
Mhm.
full stop. So I can see her being closer to liking this particular artist and wanting to work with him.
Absolutely. Especially because when
and
she's talking
obviously,
about,
to your point, they would
Mhm.
be fine with that if they ran the numbers. But I do like to think, based on hearing what her influences were for this movie,
Mhm.
that this would have been her idea.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I'm like, I do love seeing that because her influences, like you're talking about, she did talk about Final Fantasy
Mhm.
Advent Children, the movie, and I'm like, this is great to see because
For
there's
like the choreography of fighting, which I loved. Like I
yeah,
really liked how they shot. I know people were like it was cut to shit, but I I had fun with it. I
it
thought it
was
was well done.
I completely agree, and it's just one of those things that's just like giving that voice to all those nerdy black kids that love anime because there's
Mhm.
so many out there, and I'm like, like I saw that, and I'm like, and the funny thing is we've talked about Romeo Must Die a few times, where I'm like
Yeah.
black and Asian cultures and Chinese cultures mixing together to get like really really strong bonds and all this kind of stuff in that kind of that space. This is something that I'm like, no, Nia Costa like really wanting Park Seo Joon in here is just one of those things where I'm like, yes, this is like genuine. It's great.
Mhm.
I really like seeing that. So I the only thing I hated was like, oh, do we get to see more of him at some point, or like is that planet just left for dead now, or what's going on?
I kind of got the sense they were fucked. Yeah.
Yeah, they were so fucked because I'm like, I don't trust this planet to defend itself.
No, I don't. I don't think it's looking good for that group of people. He could get away, hopefully, but
Yep.
I don't think it's looking good for the planet as a whole.
Yeah, and who knows? They could have been like, oh, we stopped taking like we only took 30% of the water. They have whatever. They have more land now, so cool. Like it, they could have done a lot more of that kind of stuff or whatever. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh man, how do we get a water world without what's his face? A cameo from the terrible movie guy, um, from the actual movie Waterworld. Because I was
Kevin
like,
Costner.
yes, Costner.
He's too busy in DC, man. He's Superman's dad.
I get that. I get that. But it's just
You
one of
can't
those
show
things
up.
where I'm like, that would have been so funny to me if Costner was a part of the water world in any capacity. I would have been like, nice. Water world.
Um.
Terrible
So,
movie,
yeah.
by the way.
When's the last time you saw it?
It was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
It
I
was
don't
during
think
the
it's
pandemic.
terrible.
I think it's just taking itself way too seriously, and it's just one of those weird things where like, why are they fighting for that soil when there's nowhere they could possibly grow anything on? It's weird.
No.
But you're right. Maybe I should watch it
I
again. But
don't think it's as terrible as people like to say. I think it was just more like Kevin Costner's important, and that's what he wanted to put his money into.
that's fair.
And people were like, "Good, it failed. Fuck you." But yeah, I
Waterworld.
think yeah, the big thing of the mid-credits scene giving us our look at X-Men fully in not 616, but fully in the MCU universe at a meta level, I should say.
Yeah.
And I believe they're not going to stick with this for many reasons based on how they're leaning towards incursions and flattening things out so it's just the one world. But you wanted to know like where the mutants were, and it's like, yeah, they're adjacent. They're not in 616 or whatever the fuck it's called, 19999. I don't remember. But
I mean, we can ask Iman Vellani that.
yeah, she
and
says
Kevin Feige.
19999. She does not. She says Kevin Feige's wrong for saying it's 616.
Yeah.
But the point is, the movies we've been watching, it's in a different universe than the ones we've been watching, and it all counts. And I think that is cool. And they did it, and they brought back Kelsey Grammer, which that was when my audience was like, "Fuck yeah, all right, cool." Like there was a bit of a hum for Tessa Thompson, but when Beast showed up, it was over, and Paulie was like, "What the fuck is everyone so happy about? Who is this?" And I was like, I guess you only started watching superhero movies like around Dark Knight." But
Yeah.
it was interesting to see that, and I thought that was a nice emotional moment too, of her being like, "Mom," and having Maria Rambeau be like, "Mom, I don't know who the fuck you are. You back off." She's binary in this world. I'm happy for that actress who gets to just keep coming back.
Yeah. Because she
Like,
got to play Captain Marvel in the Multiverse of Madness movie.
and she's in the movie proper as well. She's not
Yes.
just in the mid credit scene in a very affecting scene, I thought, which is
Yeah.
Not Miss Captain Marvel's talking about how she still needs to piece together her memories, and they're like, well, we should just pool our memories so we can like remember stuff. And they brought back that mechanic from the first Captain Marvel where you can kind of like rewind through people's memories and zoom in, and I thought that was really cool that they brought that back. But then this twist was like, oh no, Carol's remembering things that Monica does not want to have to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was really well done. And she's like, "Don't do that again. I don't want to. I don't want to relive this. I don't want to relive this. Stop what you're doing."
Yes.
And Carol's like, I couldn't help it. I'm sorry." But yeah, so you see that Carol did come back during the blip to talk to Maria. So
Yeah.
Maria didn't die not ever seeing her friend again.
Yeah, that's I think that's important because like of all the things in all the worlds that she did make time for Maria Rambeau. And I think that is important. I really, really do. Good for Lashana Lynch for being able to stay in this this universe a lot more than her character originally did.
Well, yeah, because you're like, oh, she's in the 90s. They don't, and then she gets killed off. But like, no, they'll find a way to bring her back. And
Yeah,
baby. To keep teasing, like she was gonna be a superhero one way or the other.
She's gonna get a suit. She's gonna get all this kind of stuff, and now she's binary, which is, from my understanding, a newer hero in the Marvel thing. There's a lot of different origins, but I've heard basically she is like a Captain Marvel of her own, right?
Yeah. So I guess the upsetting thing you've already alluded to is to end the movie. Monica needs to like get into the tear in time and bring it together, and she gets stuck. And I like that she has line. I know it's a bit of hand holding, but I like that she's like, I always knew this was the plan, by the way, so don't like don't try and save me. Don't act like this is some weird sacrifice. This is what needs to happen, so it's happening. And yeah, that's when she gets stuck in the universe with the X-Men and wakes up in X Mansion. Even when I can't remember who says, I think it's Beast to Binary, says like, "Oh, Charles was asking for this." People are like, "Oh, yes, yes, yes." I was like, I'm happy this can make people happy.
Yeah, they definitely wanted people to leave on a high note from this, for sure. And the interesting thing to me was like, during the movie, during the post credits, I called it, and the people around me were like, "There's no way." I'm like, "No, I'm 100% sure they're gonna bring in the X-Men in this." And the reason why is because they went the whole movie without alluding to Kamala Khan's mutantness in this. I'm like, "There's no way they're gonna, leave that as an open like target for criticism from everyone else to be like, oh, well, she's this mutant and we don't get a payoff with it." I'm like, nope, there's your payoff, baby. And what a big payoff. And the debate now is just like, which continuity is this? But in the credits scene, they were of course it's the Fox one, but what I mean is this the Days of Future Past crew? Is this the Sophie Turner crew?
I said it's the Fox one because you know that they didn't give a fuck. So why would Kevin Feige try and untangle that? All you need to know is it's the Fox one.
Fair enough. But that's it was cool because seeing the in the credits, the especially the score part where they're talking about which songs they use, they were like, oh, there's X2 and the Days of Future Past theme both in that scene. So I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. They're going post Days of Future Past. That's where we can get the Wolverines. That's where we can get all those other characters, and the rumors of all the other characters joining the other movies and all that kind of stuff may actually be true now. So that's fanboys got what they wanted and they're still not happy. So this is one of those things where I'm like, see, you can't make those people, you're in your own way.
They tried to protect this movie as much as possible. They're like, here you go. Like, when you were complaining about New Asgard during Secret Invasion, here we go. Like, we're going to address that. When you were like, where the fuck are we getting the X-Men? Here you go. We got the X-Men. We've got one of our characters in their universe now. It's going to happen. But you can't you can't really defend against the ease at which people take to misogyny and misogynoir and all that stuff.
Yeah, people were committed to hating this movie before they even saw it. So that's the part where I'm like, I don't like that people
I
are
will
like,
also-
oh, I'm critiquing this movie. I'm like, no, it's a vehicle for your hate. This movie is a vehicle for your hate, and that sucks.
I will also say there's people that are just, committed to not liking MCU, which doesn't mean they're racist or any of that stuff.
Mhm.
There's two groups that really get to have a lot of overlap on this movie,
Mhm.
which is why they tried. And yeah, we said Kate Bishop is in the movie as well.
Yeah.
I like that she mentioned, when she's like, yeah, there's kids like me. She's like, I'm 23. She's like, hey, whatever. Just join, please. She legitimately says, please.
It's really, really funny.
But yeah, I felt like I knew those two scenes were gonna happen, and I was like, yeah, they really want to protect this. But I was surprised, even though I knew there was the Kate Bishop scene coming. I forgot because I was actually engaged with the movie enough to not be like, oh, and then this has to happen. So it worked for me. And then the people were picking apart that the last trailer scene where you see her in the X-Men universe, and people are like, no, Marvel wouldn't put a post-credit scene in the trailer. And it's like, yes, they did.
Yes,
they really did. But it didn't matter because I was like, yeah, this is, I don't know what more people want out of this. This was the movie that was going to do it. It's paying off a bunch of stuff. I can't remember. Apparently, it's paying some stuff off that got started in Guardians of the Galaxy as well. So like,
there's jump points and stuff like that.
There's jump points, and I guess it's like kind of like, what vacuum happened with Ronan the Accuser getting killed off. So I thought it was a fun movie, but I felt like it was a movie that was addressing a bunch of stuff as well, and people still. Again, I understand there's people that are just out on the MCU, and it's cool to hate that, and I'm not saying that to be defensive. It's just whatever. If that's your thing, that's your thing.
Yeah.
It's just a bummer when you also have the people that don't like women and people of color, and they get to also jump on the hate as well.
Yeah, and because it more people are validating that than they should, because they're not seeing through that issue of like, yeah, you hate on women and women of color, and that's very clearly evident with your review. There were so many people that were just straight up committed to hating this movie right off the bat because of pick whatever reason, but they were just solely committed because when you push back like you and I are and go like, hey, do you not realize that you got this, and you got this? You're just not going to be happy unless it's, something that you can directly identify with, which is, that sucks. It's just like, oh, cool. We have to make sure that you're happy all the time. And one thing I will say, that this is the part that really, really sucks with the algorithm. They kind of go into it with the newest season of Black Mirror, how people are like, yeah, we tried to do happy, but people don't like happy. People like negative. And I'm like, that is from the algorithm standpoint, from clickbait standpoint, from all that kind of stuff. Anger and hate does drive up numbers. And that's where I really, really hate where these critics are getting now in their own heads about like, oh, my views are going up, so that must mean I'm onto something and all that. And they're just going to double down on the hate, which I'm like, oh, man, no, look at it objectively. They did so much with so little time, so little runtime. It was fun. It was not a movie for you. Not everything is for you, but this is something that exists, and I'm glad it does, because I get to tell my cousin that she should take her kids to see this, because it's good to have my second cousins, who are both girls, it's good to have them see what women can do, and have that kind of inspiration, because it does matter. Like, I mean, if I was young now and saw Jeremy Lin do his stuff at the Garden, I'd be like, I could be a basketball player. That would actually drove me to go towards sports and something like that. But it's just giving people more options is a great thing. And it sucks that so many people are not only driven by hate, but that their algorithms are promoting this hate too. Damn you, Google. Damn you.
So yeah, let's get into rating this movie.
Mhm.
I'm going to give it an 8 for all the reasons I stated in the hour before I said let's rate this. What
Mhm.
about you?
I'm giving it a 7.
Nice.
I mean, I just want more. I just want more of the movie. I wish Nia got to do a lot more things. The things that she did get to include that obviously did get past the censor boards and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I see what you actually wanted to do, and I like it. I really, really like it. So, it's I think the committee has held it back a little bit too much, and I want more of Nia DaCosta's actual full vision. But like you said, she got to make the movie she wanted within the confines that she was given.
Mhm.
But take away those confines, a la what James Gunn was allowed to do, all those kind of things of pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope, getting to drop the F-bomb in Guardians and all that kind of stuff. That it's just it would have been better. It's kind of like my issue with Shang-Chi. I'm like, oh, I wish they got to do more with the material, but what they did give us was still something I enjoyed at the end of the day in retrospect. At the first time, I was just more angry than anything else. But in retrospect, I'm like, no, it is good for Simu. It's good for this kind of stuff, and this is fun. And this is a fun movie, and I think that's what's needed after Phase 4, which is grief. We need to have fun because that is part of the healing process, and Marvel's doing it right from that standpoint. I think they're doing a very, very good job of this phase is having definitely a lot more fun with itself. Brie Larson really got to do a lot more in terms of range than she did in Captain Marvel, and it to me was like clearly having way more fun on screen. The energy between all three actually worked out really, really well, and like you pointed out, like the best cast comic book person, Iman Vellani. I I agree with you on that opinion. She is the best cast like representation of the comic book character. And to see her on screen and the family, it's great. I just wanted more, so that's why I'm leaving it at 7.
That is fair. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Contra Zoom Pod, Springfield Googleplex, and more. So go to thatshelf.com. You'll find our show, those shows, and more shows. If you want to hear older episodes of our show, please go to tdfelverything.com/spoiledrotten or go to any podcast platform of your choice. You can subscribe, rate, review, follow, do all that great stuff. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are at TDF Spoiled on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So you've got options. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.